Look out, look out, pink elephants on parade. Here they come, hippity-hoppity. They're here and there, pink elephants everywhere.
You saw nothing. Hey guys, I'm Luke from the Broken Meeple, and this is another review, and today something a little bit more light-hearted than the typical affair of late, and that is When I Dream. This is a reprint of a game that was released at some point, I think last year, maybe just earlier this year. It was in a smaller box, art entirely by Vincent Dutrait, mostly in the American market, and it was basically a party game where you had to give clues about cards as they came out, but the person guessing the clues was blindfolded, and depending on what role you had, you were either trying to help them get it right or, you know, coax them into getting it wrong. Well, this is essentially the sort of bigger box reprint of it, so it's had some Repos Production upgrades in the components. The artwork is now from a smorgasbord of artists, I mean Vincent Dutrait included, but there's loads of them. In fact, I think the rulebook, rulebook's got about 20 of them at the back. You know, it gives credit to. That's a lot of different artists. I got to give them that. And it's essentially, though, the same game, maybe with the odd little rule tweak. But predominantly, it's that same thing. So essentially, you take it in turns to be the dreamer. You put on this slightly funky, mask, sleeping mask, which, to be fair, I wonder if it would actually just work if it would help me get to sleep better at night in general. But I digress. And the idea is that cards will come off the table, you know, all these weird and wonderful artwork cards that kind of remind you a little bit of Dixit. They basically have two aspects to them, and there's a word on the top and the bottom. You only use one side at a time, so it adds to the longevity. And the idea is that you have a role, if you're not the dreamer, and it's either the fairies, the boogeymen, or the Sandman. The fairies are trying to get the dreamer to guess them correctly. The boogeymen are the opposite. They want them to get it wrong. The Sandman is all about balance. They want an equal number of good and wrong answers. And there's only usually about one, maybe two of them in a set. Most of the time it's fairies or boogeymen. And the idea is you will take it in turns to give a clue word about the card. If you're a fairy, you obviously want to give a very good clue. The boogeymen have to give a vague clue. You can't just give a completely random clue because you get the card as a penalty. And that's down to debate with the players. So you're trying to give a clue that's related but somewhat vague and somewhat misleading. And the Sandman will chop and change depending on how the actual round is going, because they might want them to get it right at one point, then get it wrong. They want a balance. The idea is that you keep going and tallying up how many cards that the dreamer gets right by a single word guess. They're all just one word. There's no catchphrases or anything weird like that here. And then once that's done, bearing in mind that the dreamer does not know which answers he's got right or wrong, he or she, let's be not specific. And what they do is that they have a chance to get some even bonus points if they can recount the dream using all the correct answers. The fairies will score for correct answers, the boogeymen will score for wrong answers, the Sandman has his own scoring system, the dreamer will get points for right answers as well, but if they can tell the dream utilising all of the correct answers they've done, then they get some bonus points. And that's more the party aspect of the game, and it can lead to some good laughs. But you want to leave out the wrong ones, but of course you don't know which ones you got wrong and which ones you didn't. So there's an aspect of memory for the dreamer. You can't just simply be thinking about cards while sleeping with your head on your shoulder. You need to also try to remember the stuff you've been saying. And that's pretty much the game. Everybody takes it in turns to be the dreamer, and then eventually, once that's done, you tally up all the points and see who wins. Pretty simple party game. Plays anywhere from 4 to 10 players, and works pretty well at all counts, really. I mean, it doesn't seem to feel better or worse with less or more. I think more is better just to have more interaction and more different types of players, but I've played this with 4 players, it works just fine, really. You know, it's just a case of what roles are in the game. So, how does it feel theme-wise? Well, theme-wise, I mean, it's a party game, but it's definitely got that party aspect there. the whole guessing clues on words and that is no stranger to most party games, and people will be used to that, so it's not something that will be too complex for them. But I really love that recounting the dream part. That's where the big laughs for this come in. Because that person is blindfolded and all they have is single words to go on. They don't have like a description of the dream, they just have the words. And there's a mix of words in here. I mean, I'll just go for a few. Let's say they got this many right, okay? So they have, it's better this way actually, squirrel, mummy, castle, cowboy, cat. There's the ones you got right. Tell me a dream using those 5 things. You know, I was strolling by the sidewalk, and a black cat crossed my path, being chased by a cowboy who was on his way to the castle of Camelot, which is apparently being haunted by a nasty mummy. Led by King Squirrel. I don't know. I mean, you could literally come up with any stupid dream you like. And it's great to hear some of the weird stuff that people come up with. And it's definitely where the biggest laughs for this come. But I enjoy giving the clues as well. I enjoy receiving the clues. It's, you know, very free-flowing, very straightforward to play. Component-wise, sound. I mean, this is Repos Production. Do you really need to be thinking that they've got, you know, anything less than quality here? I mean, the cover, bright, vibrant, with that stark white outside. It certainly sings off the shelf. On top of that, you have got, you know, you've got this bed, literally a bed with the cards in it. And you put this little pedestal thing on it, on this end, like so. So it looks like a 4-poster bed. And the idea is that it covers up the other word. So you only read off the bottom. Great little design feature. Although I will say that having this bed and the mask and all that in this thing means that, yes, it has a custom insert, and yes, it works, but you know that the second this gets an expansion, and I bet it will, because the cards in here will last you a fair while, but they're not going to last forever, this lovely insert in here is going to become redundant. You just know it's going to happen. Because it's a good insert, but there's a lot of plastic in here from the insert, and most of this is just holding the point tokens, a sand timer, which for some reason got stuck with mine. I think mine's a little bit stuck on the minute, so I recommend using your mobile phone if it's a little bit temperamental. And of course, the roll cards themselves, again, great artwork, great quality. But you know that this cannot fit more cards when they inevitably release an expansion. And they will. Because let's face it, what do you have to do? It's the same as Dixit. Dixit just releases boxes of 84 cards every now and again whenever it wants to expand it. Great, more of the same. This doesn't need to be overcomplicated, let's just add more cards. But there's nowhere else to put the cards. So what are you going to do? You know, unless they give you a big box that you can start storing them in, you're going to chuck the insert. And it's a shame, because it's a nice insert for what's there. So, a little pre-warning about that. But for the base game as it is, you know, the insert for this is perfectly fine. And it doesn't, you know, it's pretty thin, doesn't take up that much room on your shelf. So, not a massive deal. Rules are simple. Point scoring is easy. It's not particularly ambiguous. The flaws, well, there's not many. I mean, I really enjoyed this. I thought it was good fun, a good laugh. But there's a couple of flaws. Firstly, most party games are quite group dependent. This one, very group dependent. Because giving the clues and that is all fine. People gravitate towards that. But the whole recounting the dream thing really requires the group to be in that mood. That they're going to roleplay it. They're going to like say the weirdest dream that they can think of. They're not going to just try and get all the clue words. You need to cheese it up a little bit. And some groups it will fall flat with if they don't do that. So you want to be in that mindset ahead of time. I mean, I actually played this after having a couple of drinks. Don't drink too much anyway. But yeah, we had such a blast because we were coming up with such weird dreams, to go by, and that is a good thing. The other flaw, though, is the boogeymen part. I like actually being the boogeymen role because you're trying to mislead them, but you've only got so much time, and you can't take forever on your clue word. At least you eventually you'll have to pass. There is a fixed amount of time, say about 5 seconds each, 10 seconds max. And trying to think of a word that's relevant but misleading. It's actually quite tricky to do. Granted, you've got a fair amount of time before it comes round to you for you to say it, but the problem is that the card might not be there by the time it gets back round to you. They might have already guessed it, whether right or wrong. So you've then got to instantly think of another clue word for this card, and you might just inadvertently say something that's actually fairly relevant. So I found that when it came to the point scoring, fairies had a much easier time scoring points than the Sandman, then the Boogeymen. I think the Boogeymen have got the hardest time collecting points. And because the rolls are randomised, they're shuffled and dealt out, you might have a time where you never see a Boogeyman in front of you. You might always be a fairy. And there'll be times when you're constantly the Boogeyman and you might feel you're at a slight disadvantage. I think it depends on the players. I have had times where Boogeymen have done well. The people being the dreamer, they vary. Some people are just really good at guessing these cards and some people aren't. And you're going to get that classic argument of, well, he said something close to that. Doesn't it count? It's similar enough. So you're going to have to come up with your own little house rules on that. The book has some main stipulations, like don't translate it, don't say sounds like, that kind of thing. But, you might have to come up with your own little house rules at the time of like, that you can't allow this, all right? That is out. Agree that with the players beforehand and you'll avoid any unnecessary arguments. But then, to be honest, how's that any different from most of these clue-giving word games? Time's Up, Taboo, Scattergrees, all that lot. You had the same problem. So, there's not much else to say, really. It's gorgeously produced, even if there is that little caveat with the insert. The cards are, vibrant, colourful, and I love the fact that there's a variety of artists, so you can sort of appreciate all the different ones as they come out. I like the mixture of roles, but I will say, player dependent, better with more players, but you don't have to go as far as 10, but certainly I think maybe 6. 6 seems a good sweet spot, 6, 7 way. 4 is not bad, it plays fine. Maybe 9, 10 is going a little bit too much. You don't really add much extra for having 9 or 10 players, but hey, it's a party game. We want it to be able to handle a large group, and it does fine. Doesn't take too long. I believe the book says 30 minutes. That's about right. Does not take long at all to get through this game. It's a nice quick party game. It's a good icebreaker. I think it works sound. Just aside from that little flaw about being group dependent, I think maybe just the Boogeymen balance is a little bit off, but not drastically. And to be honest, it's a 30-minute party game where the main crux of this is trying to guess clues and just trying to have a whale of a time with telling the weirdest wonderful dreams that you can. Again, group dependent. So, all in all, I like it and I can recommend it if you're a fan of party games. I'm going to hang on to this one because I enjoy bringing this out as a nice, simple gateway party game for people to learn that can be played super quick, because some party games can take a little longer. I would say I'm probably going to give it I would give it personally about a 7. For me, or party games I prefer. This doesn't even come close to toppling something like Time's Up or Telestrations, or if you want to call it a party game, Sheriff of Nottingham, although that's subject to another debate. But it's still a solid party game and one that I can recommend. So When I Dream, decent party game, maybe not one of the best, very group dependent, but can cause a few barrel of laughs and definitely lavishly produced and brilliant artwork as per usual when it comes to Repos Production. So that's it for me. I'll see you when I've gone and had an actual nap and woken up a bit later. If you like what you see, please subscribe to the podcast, the blog, and the video as per usual. Until then, when I wake up, remember, it's still only a game, so go to bed, sleep well, see you next time. Take care, guys.